horror games have undergone a quiet revolution within the indie game space over the past few years, but despite the success of games like Amnesia and Outlast, AAA developers have, for the most part, ignored the genre's changing landscape. While these indie games focus on the tension of an ever-present threat and a player with little way to defend themselves, the AAA horror game has more or less remained the same since the release of Resident Evil 4 almost 10 years ago. Alien Isolation is the first real attempt by a large studio to make an Amnesia-style horror game, and while it is largely successful at adapting this new type of horror to big-budget sensibilities, it makes quite a few missteps along the way. One of the first problems you'll notice is the binary nature of the alien itself. The alien doesn't even show itself until at least an hour into the game, and from there on out, it is a constant presence. Now, there are some small areas where the alien is not present, but those areas are few and far between. As soon as you manage to discern that you're in one of those areas, though, any sense of a looming threat is completely removed from the equation. On the other hand, when you are in an area where the alien is in fact present, you are incentivized to simply find the fastest route through the level and take it every single time, which is truly a shame because there is at least one thing that Alien Isolation does perfectly: its world. Everything in Alien Isolation feels like it has been ripped straight from the movies. Every single computer console and hallway is lovingly crafted. You always feel like you're in the world of Alien, at least until the annoying AI yanks you out of that illusion. While the AI of the android and human foes you will face is perfectly fine, the AI of the titular alien has some serious problems. Put simply, the alien cheats. Just like in the movies, the alien will use vents to traverse the levels, but instead of making the creature actually traverse said vents, the game's vents instead work as black boxes, inside of which the player cannot see. Once the alien enters a vent, it has for all intents and purposes despawned, and the game can choose to respawn it wherever it wants. This can lead to any number of aggravating scenarios where the alien will spawn somewhere really inconvenient for the player that it really shouldn't have been able to get to through the vent system, at least not in the amount of time it took it to do so. While the AI of the alien might be aggravating, the worst mistake that Creative Assembly made was assuming that because they were making a $60 Amnesia-style horror game, it needed to be significantly longer than Amnesia in order to make up for the price difference. Depending on how many times you end up dying incredibly cheap deaths, Alien will end up taking somewhere between 15 and 20 hours to beat, which perhaps may not have been much of a problem if you felt like you were doing meaningful tasks that entire time. Instead, at least half of Alien Isolation feels like busy work. Whether you're lumbering around outside the station aligning satellite dishes, trudging through a forced flashback sequence that features almost no interactivity, or clearing out a nest of the incredibly cheap facehugger enemies that ignore every rule the game has set out for enemies up until that point. All of these problems, combined with its unnecessary length, make Alien Isolation extremely difficult to recommend. But if I'm being honest, I actually enjoyed quite a bit of my time with the game. The fact is that when Alien Isolation is running on all cylinders, when it's at its best, the game is atmospheric, tense, and extremely enjoyable. But every time that happens, it inevitably falls apart thanks to shoddy and unrelenting AI routines. Alien Isolation has its fair share of problems, and the game only represents the first step of many in the evolution of big-budget horror games. Nevertheless, it is a strong first step, and I can't wait to see where the genre goes from here.